Take a deep breath with me. In and out. Now imagine this. A man, bare-chested, scarred, standing in the middle of a burning field. Smoke rises around him like ghosts, and the fire reflects in his eyes, not as destruction, but as revelation. They called him property. They branded his flesh, broke his bones, and chained his spirit. But on this night, history would learn his name. They said no slave could defy the empire. He did. This is the story of the slave who became a legend of resistance. Pause here. Before we step into the flames, we must understand what built them. The world was an empire of chains. From the coastlines of Africa to the plantations of Brazil, the Caribbean, and the American South, human beings were reduced to inventory. Ships carried bodies like cargo, and every wave whispered a name that would never be remembered. The plantation was more than land. It was a machine designed to erase humanity. The overseer's whip was not just punishment. It was programming. Each strike was meant to teach obedience. Each scar, a lesson in silence. But silence can only last so long, because even beneath centuries of oppression, memory survived. Whispers of kings, queens, and warriors crossed oceans in the hearts of the enslaved. Songs that carried secrets. Drums that spoke rebellion. Eyes that refused to look down. And among them was one man, his real name lost, but his legend eternal. Some called him Malembe, others the Firewalker. He was born in captivity, but his spirit belonged to no master. Pause. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine him as a child. Tiny hands gripping sugarcane stalks taller than his body. The sun searing his back. The overseer shouts echoing like thunder. He watched men broken, women weeping, children sold. And each day, something inside him hardened, not hatred, but conviction. He learned the way of the land, the rhythm of the harvest, the patterns of the guards, the hidden trails through mangroves and forests. He studied chains not as symbols of despair, but as blueprints for escape. And when night fell, he listened. Around the fires, the elders spoke of home, of Africa, of gods who walked through flames, of ancestors who rose from ashes. Fire cleanses, one whispered. Fire remembers. Another said. That night, Malembe decided. One day, fire would speak again. Years passed. His body grew stronger, his will unbreakable. He learned to fight quietly, small rebellions, invisible revolts. A tool accidentally broken, a harvest mysteriously lost. A message passed from one enslaved soul to another. And then came the day that would ignite everything. It began with a single lash too many. A woman collapsed in the sun, her back torn open, her child screaming beside her. The overseer laughed. Malembe didn't. He looked at the man, then at the sky. Something shifted inside him. That night, he gathered those who would listen, men and women whose faces bore the same fire. They met in silence, behind the cane fields, near the river that carried away blood and sweat alike. Malembe spoke softly, but his words cut sharper than steel. They call us slaves, he said. But tonight we answer not with chains, but with fire. Pause. Can you feel that moment? That tremor before the storm? The air thick with fear and faith, both at once? They had no muskets, no cannons, no soldiers. Only torches, machetes, and the unyielding truth that death and defiance was better than life in submission. When the first torch was lit, the world changed. Flames rose against the sky like a second sun. The night exploded with the sound of breaking wood, shouting voices, and the unmistakable rhythm of freedom. They struck the cane fields first, burning the crop that symbolized their chains. Then they turned toward the master's house, the seat of cruelty and control. Each step forward was a prayer, each flame an act of remembrance. Pause again. Listen closely. Can you hear it? The crackle of the fire, the cries of the guards, the rhythm of footsteps pounding the earth, the sound of people taking back their humanity, one breath at a time. The mansion's windows shattered, the sky turned red, and in the center of it all stood Malembe, torch in hand, his face lit by the fire he had unleashed. That night, he was no longer a slave. He was a symbol, a legend born in the ashes. But legends have a cost, and empires do not forgive defiance. Take a breath with me. In and out. Now imagine the moment when fear dies and fury takes its place. The fire spreads faster than breath. The night erupts in chaos. Smoke rolls through the cane fields, turning stars into ghosts. The sound of crackling flames drowns out the screams. The scent of sugar and smoke mixes with blood and sweat. The rebellion has begun. Malembe moves through the fire like he was born from it, a torch in one hand, a blade in the other. His shadow stretches against the flames, towering, unstoppable. Around him, men and women rise like echoes of their ancestors, barefoot, scarred, but fearless. Their weapons are crude: hoes, machetes, wooden stakes, even broken chains sharpened into knives. But in their hands, these tools become symbols of defiance. Pause here. Picture it. The slaves who were once forbidden to raise their eyes now raise their voices. They chant not words of worship, but the rhythm of war. Every heartbeat becomes a drum. Every breath, a promise. We are not slave tonight. The overseer runs, his whip dragging behind him like a useless tail. His voice cracks, barking orders no one obeys. The guards rush from their quarters, rifles trembling in their hands. But before they can aim, the night blinds them. Smoke, fire, screams, all indistinguishable. And from the darkness, Malembe's voice cuts through. Tonight, the fire remembers us. A cheer erupts. Flames leap higher, consuming the cane. The sky turns orange and red, then black. The enslaved advance not as victims, but as warriors. They move in rhythm, guided by fury and faith. A man with a scar across his face swings a machete, his cry echoing like thunder. A woman, her child taken months ago, lights a torch and hurls it through the window of the master's house. The mansion burns. Its white walls glow gold before collapsing into ash. The paintings of noble ancestors melt away. The portraits of saints darken under smoke. And for a fleeting moment, the enslaved see justice in the fire's reflection. Pause. Do you feel it? The tremor beneath your feet? The weight of centuries cracking open like dry wood? But freedom, even when it comes with fire, is never simple. Because fire devours everything, chains and innocence alike. As the flames spread, the rebels split. Some fight, others free the captives still locked in barns, cellars, and sheds. Children cry, dogs bark. The air becomes heavy with both victory and terror. And above it all, Malembe stands, his eyes fixed on the burning sky. He knows this moment will not last. He knows dawn will bring vengeance. But still, he whispers to himself, if they remember my name only through the ashes, it will be enough. Pause again, because here is where courage becomes tragedy, and tragedy becomes legend. From the forest edge, the soldiers come. Drums in the distance, horns blaring, the sound of empire marching. The enslaved turn toward the sound, their faces glowing in the firelight. They know what's coming, but none run. They stand in a half circle around the burning house, gripping their weapons tighter. Malembe raises his torch. This is our land tonight, he says. And no empire can steal it back without fire. The first shot breaks the air. A rebel falls. The second shot follows. Another drops. Still they do not scatter. Instead, they charge. The clash is brutal. Steel meets steel. Blood meets soil. Cries of pain and defiance rise together into the night. A soldier swings his sword. Malembe dodges, the blade grazing his shoulder. He counters, slashing across the man's chest. The soldier collapses, his rifle falling into the flames. The enslaved fight like men possessed, not for victory, but for dignity, for one breath of freedom before death. And amid the chaos, something miraculous happens. The flames, carried by the wind, spread toward the fields of other plantations. Miles away, another enslaved man sees a glow in the sky. He whispers to his wife, "It has begun." And he lights his own fire. Then another, and another. Across valleys, across rivers, across borders, fires rise like constellations, an army of flames marching against empire. Pause here. Can you imagine the sight from above? The earth glowing in patches of rebellion. Each one a heartbeat of freedom. Malembe looks out over the fields. His body is bleeding, his breath ragged, but his eyes are alive. For every fire they put out, he says, another will rise. And those soldiers swarm the grounds, though muskets flash and swords fall. His words hang in the smoke, indestructible. By dawn, the rebellion is crushed. Bodies lie scattered. The mansion is a blackened skeleton, and the Empire believes it has won again. But what empires never understand is that legends cannot be killed. Because even in defeat, Molembe's fire spreads in stories and whispers, in songs sung in secret by those still in chains. And so, though the flames die, the memory burns on. Pause one last time in this block. Take a breath. Can you feel it? The heat that never truly fades? The echo of those who fought with fire and steel, knowing their names might be forgotten. But their courage would never die? Because this is the night the Empire tried to silence. The night when slaves became soldiers. The night when chains turned into weapons. The night when one man's fire became everyone's freedom. Take a breath with me. In and out, the fire has dimmed. The smoke hangs like ghosts over the fields. The night that screamed with rage now bleeds into a quiet dawn. And in that silence, the sound of boots, the soldiers have come. The Empire always comes. They step through ash and bone, their rifles gleaming, their faces blank. The scent of burned sugar clings to the air, sweet and sick at once. It is the smell of rebellion's aftermath. The perfume of defiance turned to dust. They find the bodies first. Men, women, children, some still clutching weapons, some still looking toward the horizon, as if waiting for a sunrise that never came. Pause here. Can you picture it? The ground blackened, but still warm. The world caught between silence and memory. And among the bodies, one stands out, Molembe. He is alive. Barely. His arm burned, his skin covered in soot, his breath shallow. But his eyes are still burning. The soldiers drag him by chains through the ruins of the mansion he destroyed. Behind him, others follow, the wounded, the captured, the condemned. They are paraded through the streets of the colony like trophies. The masters watch from balconies. The church rings its bells, not for mourning, but for victory. And the crowd stares, silent, afraid, complicit. The governor reads his decree aloud. These men and women defied their masters. Their punishment shall serve as example. An example. That's what Empire calls execution. But Molembe smiles. He looks at the faces around him. The enslaved force a watch, the soldiers trembling, the priest pretending not to see. And he says quietly, an example, yes, but not the one you think. Pause again, because that moment, that defiance, even at the edge of death, is what turns a man into legend. The gallows rise in the square. The air feels heavy, almost sacred. The crowd gathers, but no one breathes. A priest mutters a final blessing. Molembe raises his head toward the sky, and before the rope tightens, he says one last thing. You can hang my body, but you can't hang the fire. Then silence. A silence so deep it cuts through centuries. The soldiers leave. The crowd disperses. The Empire congratulates itself on restoring order. But that night, in the slave quarters, someone whispers his name. Then another, and another, until the whisper becomes a song, low, trembling, dangerous. The fire has been passed on. Pause. Because here is the truth the masters never understood. You can kill a man, but not his memory. You can silence a voice, but not an echo. You can destroy a rebellion, but not its idea. And so, the story of Molembe spreads in secret. Mothers tell it to their children before sleep. A bedtime story that burns like prophecy. Old men hum it while sharpening tools. The rhythm of the whetstone like drums of war. Even the priests hear it in confessions whispered through tears. I saw him. I saw the fire. I saw freedom. The Empire writes its own version, of course. They call it the Great Cane Fire. They call the rebels bandits. They call Molembe mad. They write his name out of the books, but it survives in mouths and memories, carved into hearts like marks on old wood. Pause here. Think about this. How many stories like his were lost? How many names erased before they could become legend? How many acts of courage buried beneath words like order, civilization, salvation? Because every rebellion that was crushed left behind an invisible rebellion still burning. Every execution became a spark for another uprising. Every scar became a story waiting to be told. Now picture this. Years later, a child in chains hears the name Molembe whispered by her mother. Who was he? The girl asks. And the mother replies, he was the one who showed us that even chains can burn. That child grows up. She carries the story like a blade hidden under her heart. And one day, when her own time comes, she lights her own fire. That is how legends survive, not in books, but in blood. Pause again. Take a deep breath. Inhale the smoke of memory. Exhale the silence of forgetting. Because the aftermath of rebellion is not just a feat. It is transformation. The masters rebuild, yes, but the enslaved rebuild too. Not their homes, which were never theirs to begin with. Not their chains, which were forced upon them. They rebuild something far stronger. Belief. Belief that no whip is eternal. Belief that no empire is unbreakable. Belief that even when history buries their names, their fire will find air again. And that belief, that is resistance. So the years pass. The plantations rise again. The ships keep sailing. The coins keep clinking in the hands of those who call themselves civilized. But beneath it all, memory breathes. In every whispered song, in every scar hand, in every eye that refuses to bow. Pause one last time. Look at the world around you. How many stories like Malembe's have you never heard? How many heroes were erased so you could believe history was clean? The aftermath of fire is ash, but ash feeds the soil. And from that soil, new fire always grows. So when they say the rebellion ended, know this. It never did. It just went quiet, waiting for someone to remember. Take a deep breath with me. In and out. The flames are gone, the smoke is cleared, and the empire sleeps again. Thinking has silenced the fire. But fires, like memories, have strange ways of surviving. They live in ashes. They live in whispers. They live in hearts that refuse to forget. And so, the story of Malembe, the slave who became a legend, did not die with the rope. It spread, like embers carried by the wind. Pause here. Imagine this. Decades later, a child born on the same plantation where Malembe once fought sneaks out at night. The moon glows faintly through clouds. The air smells of cane and sweat. She kneels beside her grandmother, who hums a tune, a song without words, but full of memory. The grandmother leans close and says, "They burned his body, but not his fire." That's how legends live. Not in monuments, but in murmurs. Not in history books, but in hearts. The masters could not erase that. The church could not sanctify it away. The empire could not outlaw it. Because what Malembe began was not just rebellion, it was remembrance. Pause again. Think about that word, remembrance. It is more than memory. It is a kind of resistance. To remember is to refuse the version of history written by those in power. To remember is to light a torch in the dark. To remember is to say, "You tried to bury us, but we were seeds." Now picture this. Years later, in a distant city, a man buys sugar at the market. Sweet, white, innocent. He does not know that the soil it came from is stained red. He does not know that a man named Malembe once set those same fields ablaze, shouting freedom into the night. He does not know because history forgot to tell him. Pause here. How many of us live like that man today? Consuming, moving, believing the world as it was always meant to be, because someone else erased what came before. But tonight, you know, you've heard the story, you've seen the fire, and once you know, you can't unsee it. The story of Malembe is not only about slavery, it's about power and what happens when ordinary people, stripped of everything, find a reason to rise. It's about defiance, the kind that survives beyond death. It's about you, because the same silence that buried him still exists today. Pause again. Ask yourself this. Whose stories are still buried now? Who is still unseen, unheard, unnamed? Whose pain is still turned into profit? Because rebellion is not only fire and steel. Sometimes it is memory. Sometimes it is voice. Sometimes it is you refusing to look away. Malembe's legend spread across generations. In some versions, he escaped the gallows. In others, his spirit haunted the masters' houses, setting their walls aflame in the dead of night. And in every version, he never stopped fighting. That's the thing about legends. They grow where silence cracks. Pause here again. Close your eyes. Hear the faint beat of a drum, slow, steady, patient. That's not just rhythm. That's remembrance. That's the pulse of history reminding us the fight was never finished. Empires fall. Names fade. But the story remains. And in that story, there's a question, one that no empire can erase. If he became a legend, what will you do with his memory? Will you let it fade into silence again? Will you scroll past it like another forgotten story? Or will you carry it, speak it, pass it on, let it live through you? Because that is how history changes. Not through kings, not through decrees, but through remembrance, through fire carried from one soul to another. Pause. Breathe with me. In and out. Picture a single candle burning in darkness. Its flame is small, fragile, and yet it lights everything around it. That candle is you, and the fire inside it came from someone who refused to kneel centuries ago. Malembe's story was not supposed to survive, but here it is, and that means you are now part of it. When you share it, it grows. When you remember it, it burns brighter. When you tell again, the empire's silence breaks, one crack, one word, one truth at a time. So as this story ends, listen closely. Do you hear it? The whisper beneath the music, the breath between words, the echo that says, the fire never died. That's not history. That's inheritance. Pause one final time. Because this is not just Malembe's story, it's humanity's. The story of how even in chains, the human spirit looks toward the flame and says, not yet. So remember this night. Remember the fire. Remember the man who became legend, not because he lived, but because he refused to die in silence. If he became a legend, what will you do with his memory? Subscribe for more stories on the Broken Chains channel. And tell me, what do you think of this hidden history? Because silence was a master's weapon. And memory is ours.